We start tonight with a Chinese spy balloon, the butt of all jokes on the internet, the driver of memes on social media. How can you spy with a balloon? The world asked. 1 week later, it seems the joke is on us. Turns out the balloon is no laughing matter. It is part of a vast Chinese surveillance program. And wait till you hear how many countries and regions it targeted. Colombia, Costa Rica, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan and India. Yes, even India. China has tried to spy on India using these balloons. There have been sporadic reports. We investigated, we tried to connect the dots, and this is what we found. On Monday, the United States organized a briefing. It was led by Vantage Sharma, America's Deputy Secretary of State. You could call her their Deputy Foreign Minister. She held a briefing. Sources say officials from 40 embassies in Washington, D.C. were called, 40. Among them were representatives from India. Why was India part of this conversation? Well, two reasons. Number one, New Delhi is an important security partner for Washington, D.C. And number two, balloon-like objects have been spotted in India too. Look at this picture. It emerged in January last year. Where is this from? It is believed to be from Port Blair, the capital of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It was flying at a very high altitude. Some panel-like objects were seen hanging. Does it look like a spy balloon? Actually, scratch that. Let me ask you this. What is a spy balloon? The world is still trying to figure it out. As for the object spotted over Port Blair, the reports do not say very much. What we can tell you is that it did raise suspicions, especially because of where it was found. Port Blair is a key military outpost for India. Both the Indian Army and the Navy have a presence there. Why is Port Blair important for India? Because it is strategically located. Important trade and shipping routes pass through Andaman and Nicobar Islands, so Port Blair can be used to keep an eye on Chinese activities. Now back to the balloons. The pattern is somewhat similar to what we saw in the US. There, the balloon was spotted over Montana. America has nuclear missile silos in this region, which is why what happened in the US is of interest to New Delhi. When the Americans briefed their international partners, Indian officials were present in the room. What were they told? That these spy balloons are part of a PLA program, an espionage program of the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese army. It's hard to say when the program began, but the US believes China has conducted dozens of such missions since 2018. A part of this operation is run out of Hainan. This is a Chinese island. The PLA is believed to have a base there. What kind of base? It's a naval facility. Reports say the Hainan base is home to China's J-8 fighter jets. It is also home to some of these balloons. But why balloons? Why is China using balloons to spy? The PLA sees them as a useful tool for intelligence gathering. And they make sense for multiple reasons. Number one, balloons are cheaper to make. Number two, they float in the air. Their path is difficult to predict, so they're more difficult to track. And number three, they can fly between 60 to 80,000 feet, the same altitude as commercial jets. And from that height, they can hover over a target for hours and gather more intelligence. These balloons are well equipped. They have digital cameras and radio signal and satellite transmission capabilities. Basically, everything that you need to spy. Some analysts believe that they can be operated like drones, that these balloons can be flown remotely, controlled remotely. So they may not look very high-tech, but they do pose a threat. And here's the scariest part. China can deploy and control these balloons from within its borders. Vantage Sharma, the US Deputy Secretary of State, is said to have mentioned this during the briefing. Reports say she referred to an incident from 2019, another balloon sighting. The US says this too was a Chinese balloon, a Chinese spy balloon. In 2019, it circumnavigated the globe, meaning it floated all around the globe. American forces prepared a report about this last year. It was titled People's Republic of China High Altitude Balloon. It refers to that incident from 2019. The balloon rose to an altitude of 65,000 feet and drifted past Hawaii and across Florida before continuing its journey. What about the balloon in Montana? American officials have recovered the debris. Reports say a team from the FBI is analyzing it in a government lab. So we could know more about this in the days to come. American lawmakers will also be briefed about it.
Having them come down over water is a huge, huge advantage than having them come down over land. Because over water, much of the surveillance balloon's stuff can be recovered. So we're going to know what it is, and we're also going to know what they've sought. And even as the balloon came over the southeastern part of the United States, we were monitoring it very, very carefully to see what the Chinese were picking up and not.
And how is China taking all of this? After the initial half-apologetic notes, China is doing what it does best, being belligerent. Let me tell you about their latest demand. Return the balloon, they say. China wants the US to give back the burst balloon. China's ambassador to France has given an interview. The Chinese embassy in Paris shared a transcript, and I have a copy of it. Listen to what they said. If you pick up something on the street, you should return it to the owner if you know who the owner is. If the Americans don't want to return it, that's their decision. This demonstrates their dishonesty. The moral lectures are touching. China's foreign ministry reminded Washington that the balloon belongs to Beijing.
The balloon doesn't belong to the United States. China will continue to uphold its legitimate rights and interests.
It always cracks me up when China talks about legitimate rights, and their brazenness is amazing. They may be running some fancy spy programs with balloons, but we'd like to tell them about the first rule of espionage. Don't get caught. Also, forget about getting that balloon back. As for India, we're still curious to know what New Delhi made of the balloon over Port Blair and what they did about it. We're not done with the story. Expect more in the coming days.